If you're watching this course, you've arrived at one of two conclusions. You're either a visionary genius who is preparing himself or herself for the cloud computing wave by acquiring the necessary skill sets in order to be relevant in this new era, or you're working for a company who's already implementing cloud services and you're trying to acquire the skill sets in order to be able to manage and administer the environment on cloud services like Amazon Web Services. In either case, I'm here to guide you through building an infrastructure, implementing an infrastructure, administrating an infrastructure on Amazon Web Services. Hi, my name is Elias Knaser, and I'd like to welcome you to Pluralsight. In this course, Amazon Web Services Certified SysOps Administrator Associate, we're going to be focusing on how to implement things on Amazon Web Services. Let's take a look at the course at a glance. In this course, what we're going to be focusing on mostly is the implementation aspect of Amazon Web Services. We're going to be discussing things like the infrastructure that's available to you with Amazon Web Services. Amazon Web Services has a global presence with points of presence worldwide where you can deploy and implement services. Your job as an administrator is to understand this global infrastructure, understand its architecture, and understand how to leverage it and build services against it. So we'll be talking about that. We'll also be talking about the concept of elastic computing, the ability to provision unlimited amounts of compute. If you have a workload, maybe it's a new marketing campaign that you're rolling out, you no longer have to worry about whether or not you have capacity from a compute perspective. You jump onto your Amazon Web Services infrastructure and you're able to provision compute as many as you want, as often as you want. And you can do this in an elastic manner. Now, what do I mean by elastic? What do I mean by elastic is that you can grow it or shrink it instantly. So you no longer have to worry about over provisioning or no longer have to worry about whether or not you have capacity. We're also going to be talking about cloud storage. How do I store all of this information? Remember, you're getting information, you're getting data from different sources. It's not as simple as it was 10 years ago. You're getting data from the internet today. If you're building applications for the Internet of Things, you're getting it from structured, from unstructured data, from mobile. You're getting a lot of data. And the idea of the ability to consolidate all of this data in one place and run analytics against it or run transactional database type like the ones we've had in the past like SQL or Oracle, all of that, how do you deal with that in a cloud era? We're going to be talking about the storage options, how to implement them and how to administer them. And then, of course, no topic is ever complete without security. So we're going to discuss all of the different capabilities, all of the different security aspects that you have in Amazon Web Services. We're going to talk about security groups. We're going to talk about network access control lists. We're going to talk about how do you build a sort of virtual parameter around your Amazon Web Services infrastructure so that you can secure it, so that only the traffic that you want to flow in or out is doing so. But before we do all of that, before we talk about all of this, I want to give you an idea of the AWS certification tracks. If you're starting down this journey, whether you're doing this because you want to gain that certification in order to get that new job, or maybe because you're a partner and you're required to get that certification, or maybe you're just an enthusiast that wants these certifications, that needs these certifications, you're doing this for a reason. And for that, you need to be aware of the different tracks that AWS makes available to you. So there are two tracks. You have your professional track and you have your associate track. Now, within these tracks, you also have different specializations. So, for example, you have the solution architect, you have the developer, and you have the system administrator or the SysOps administrator. Now, with a solution architect, most of these are going to be design-like courses. They're going to prepare you to design, to plan these implementations on AWS infrastructure. The developer is quite self-explanatory. This is geared towards developers that are looking to develop applications, whether it's against infrastructure as a service or if it's against the platform as a service services that are offered with AWS, things like Lambda and SQS and SNS and others. How do you develop against them? And then you have your SysOps administrator. This is where you learn how to manage the environment. It's not necessarily a design, it's an implement. So the difference between a solution architect and a SysOps administrator is that one track is focused on design, whereas the other track is focused on implement. Now, if you're going to be figuring out, hey, which course should I take first? I would take the implement. The implement gives you a lot of hands-on. It familiarizes you with the different components of the infrastructure so that you know what goes where, what does it look like, how do I configure this before you can get to a design. Now, if you look back at your career, you've always done things, learned things, and then moved one step up that scale in order for you to design and architect it. So in this course, and this is the course that we're going to be focusing on, this is the certification that you would go for after completing this course. It's the AWS Certified SysOps Administrator Associate level. Now, if you wanted to visit the Amazon Web Services certification page, this is the page that you would go to do so. Now, prerequisites. What do you need before you begin your SysOps Administrator certification? Is there anything that prepares you? Remember, this is an implement course, right? So we're going to open the management console and we're going to go right into things and we're going to start configuring things. Now, do you need to have a background with Amazon before you can do that? And the answer to that is yes, absolutely. And Pluralsight, we have a course that we've developed that you should take prior to this, that you should watch prior to this, which is called Amazon Web Services AWS Fundamentals for System Administrators. And this is the URL where you would be able to find it. Now, what this course does is it prepares you to take to understand better the implement course that we're going through here. It'll go in depth on a lot of the concepts. It exposes you to the different terminologies and what it means and how it works on Amazon Web Services, so that when you're moving on to this course, to the implement course, we don't have to spend a lot of time explaining, for example, what elastic block storage means, or what Route 53 means, or what virtual private cloud means. Now, we're definitely going to cover it. We're going to go through introductions on those, but we're not going to spend time in the implement course on what it means, because we've done that already in the prepare, and we expect you to have watched that before you move on to this particular course. Now, beyond that, what other additional prerequisites would you need? Now, you need an understanding of cloud computing. And again, when you're watching that prepare course, it will also give you a good understanding of cloud computing. But again, above and beyond, you should have an understanding of cloud computing. Microsoft Linux Essentials are essential, for lack of better terms. We will be working in the compute with a Microsoft operating system or with a Linux operating system. We'll be throwing around things like DHCP and DNS. So those are things that you want to be comfortable with. Networking essentials, again, DNS, you've got DHCP, routing, basic routing, and how does routing work. So understanding that will go a long way. This is not an introductory course to any kind of networking essentials, so you have to bring that knowledge with you. Working knowledge of virtualization will also go a long way. Now, cloud computing is the natural evolution of virtualization. We're not going to be talking specifically about hypervisors anywhere, but a lot of these concepts, as we start to talk about them, they will resonate. If you have a working knowledge of virtualization, it will definitely go a long way. And then you want storage fundamentals. And again, storage is where you're going to be placing all of your data. And we talked about the fact that you're going to be receiving data from different sources. So having a good understanding of storage fundamentals, the difference between IP storage versus block storage, that will also go a long way. Things like snapshots and how they work. Because again, we're not going in depth on what a snapshot means. We're going to assume that you already know what a snapshot means. And again, this is where your working knowledge of virtualization also comes into play, because a snapshot on AWS looks a lot like a snapshot on vSphere or Hyper-V. So having this knowledge will help. Now, strategy for success. Now, if you're watching this course, you're obviously interested in certification to some extent. So if you're looking to go after certification after you've completed this course, then I have kind of the secret recipe for you to succeed. And it's kind of three parts. So I start with learn. So what I want you to do is learn this material. Watch it over and over and over again until you feel like you've mastered it. If you cannot explain the material to somebody else, the material that I'm giving you in this course, if you can't explain it as good as I'm explaining it to you by the end of this course, then you don't know it well enough and you need to repeat this course. Watch it again until you feel like you can explain it to someone just as good as I'm explaining it to you. Now, once you've learned it, you obviously want to study this material. It's not enough to learn it. It's not enough to just watch what I'm explaining on screen. You want to actually study it. And you want to augment your study, whether it's watching it again, whether it's Googling and searching and going in depth, whether it's reading a book. You want to be able to study more so you can understand more, prepare maybe for the exam by taking certification tests. All of that comes in study. And then practice. So the beauty of AWS is that it gives you the free tier, right? It's a free service. Again, what is the free service? What is a free tier, Eli? If you've watched the Prepare course that we've been talking about, then you should be familiar with the free tier and how to sign up for a free tier and how to start using some of these services. So practice, 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 because that will also give you that hands-on that you need in order to manage this particular environment. Now, I also recommend that you stay connected. Now, how do you stay connected? You have the AWS newsletter. I recommend that you subscribe to that so that you're constantly being notified of the different things that are being introduced or enhanced on the AWS platform. So the AWS newsletter is good. Join any forums that you can. And finally, the advice that I will always give you, regardless of what you're doing, whether you're studying for a certification test on AWS, on Microsoft, on Citrix, on VMware, whatever it is, be passionate about it. Be very passionate about it and let that passion show. When you have passion and you're willing to show it, people will see it. They'll see that you're excited about it. If you're going to a job interview and you're passionate about this topic and you're able to talk about it, they're going to be like, we want to hire this person, and we want to hire them because of their passion, because of the energy that they're bringing to this interview, because of the knowledge that they have, the intimate knowledge that they have about this environment, because of their willingness to learn and study, because they were willing to be the first people to go after this certification, to be visionaries, and to understand that cloud computing is here to stay, and it's the next wave, the next evolution, it's the next virtualization. And they were willing to spend the time to learn it and study it. I want to hire that person. Be passionate about whatever it is that you're doing in life in general, but specifically about certification, specifically in IT, because there's so much competition. You will differentiate yourself and people will feel that energy. So this was a short module. This was a short lesson. What I wanted to do is kind of set the stage for what's going to come, what to expect, how to study, how to prepare, in order for us to kind of jump into things in the next lesson and on, the next module and on, so that we can begin this journey. So let's quickly recap what we learned in this module. Well, we started off with the course at a glance. We talked about the fact that we're going to be talking about Amazon Web Services. Amazon Web Services has an infrastructure service for the world, right? They have global presence everywhere. How do you tie it together? How do you weave these services together so that you're deploying services worldwide? Because your users might come from Japan, they might come from Australia, they might come from Europe, they might come from South America, the United States, etc. Wherever they may be, you're able to build an infrastructure that will be as close as possible to them, giving them the user experience that they want. We talked about how we're going to talk about elastic compute. Elastic compute allows you to grow and shrink your compute as much as you want. If there's a need for it, if it's the end of the month or a new marketing campaign, you need to deploy 100 new instances, aka virtual machines, well, guess what? You can do that. Once that marketing campaign is done, you power them down. You're not paying for them anymore. So we talked about that. We also talked about the fact that we want to be able to store all of this data in the cloud. We're getting data from all directions, from all different sources. How do I store it? How do I organize it? How do I work with it? How do I deal with it? We want to talk about that as well. And finally, we talked about security. It's not enough to deploy an environment. I need to know how to secure it. Right? I want to be able to know what is available to me. Is it role-based access? How do I use security groups? How do I use network access control lists? All of these concepts, we're going to talk about them from an implementation perspective. So that's the course at a glance. We talked about AWS certifications, talked about the fact that you've got two tracks. You've got the professional and the associate, and we broke it down from a solution architect, from a developer, and from a SysOps, from an implement and design and developer perspective. We also talked about prerequisites. Remember, there's a course that you should take prior to this one that explains all of the different concepts that we're going to be covering from an implement perspective in this course. So if you haven't taken that yet, I highly recommend that you do so. We also talked about different prerequisites like a working knowledge of cloud computing, virtualization, networking essentials, Microsoft and Linux, and etc. Finally, we talked about the strategy for success. We talked about the fact that you want to be able to first learn this material. Then you want to be able to study this material. Then you want to be able to practice this material. You want to stay connected either through AWS newsletters or forums. You want to be able to be passionate about the subject, passionate about the topic, and make sure that that passion shows with whomever you're talking to, not just with your interviewer, with your friends, with your coworkers. If you're explaining it to someone, make sure they know that you're passionate about this topic. Finally, I hope this module was very informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.